Hello ladies and gents, welcome back to the channel. And as you can see here, I am currently in Fly Tampa, Amsterdam. Oh, it's just so beautiful, so beautiful. But that's not exactly the star of the show. That's a pretty bold claim to be in Fly Tampa, Amsterdam and say that's not the star of the show. I mean, look at the detail here of what's going on. I mean, look, it has a curb. It has a curb. Check that. Look how detailed the curb is. Look at that. No. The star of the show today, folks, is the A2A Lockheed Martin L-049 Lockheed Constellation, and it is currently in the Flying Dutchman KLM livery, which was posted on the A2A forums. And I'll put a link to this livery. I'll put a link to the forum thread below. So some of you may be asking, Mantalk Productions, why haven't you released a Lockheed Constellation first look video the day that it came out? Surely you've been doing that for pretty much every A2A aircraft that has been released so far. Well, I knew from even before the Constellation was released, I kind of knew there's no way I can just jump on this and go, oh, this is a first view, folks. I've never looked at this in my life. I know nothing about it. I didn't want to do that to the Constellation. What I wanted to do was I wanted to fly it. I wanted to test it. I wanted to get a little bit familiar with it. Wow, check that reflections. I wanted to get a little familiar with it first before even doing my first video. So that's what this is. There is a reason why I've got it in the KLM livery and not the BOEC or the TWA livery, which everyone loves, of course, which is correct, and they are lovely liveries. The reason I've got it in the KLM livery is partly because Fly Tampa Amsterdam has been released, and partly because I kind of like KLM. And KLM did use this aircraft on certain routes. So this is going to be a bit of a first look, yes, but it's also, I'm pretty much going to launch into some line flights. I'm actually going to do some legs in this Constellation from here in Amsterdam over to JFK in New York. So if you guys are interested in that, watch the next ensuing videos. It's going to be broken up into parts. The first part is going to be this video. I'm going to be flying from here to Glasgow. BA, or BOEC back in those days, BOEC would fly from London Heathrow to Shannon in Northern Ireland, or sorry, Southern Ireland, excuse me, Ireland, the Republic. They would fly to Shannon in the Republic, and then they would fly from there to Gander, and from Gander they would then fly to JFK. Well, KLM at the same time were doing routes as well. And what KLM were doing is they were flying from Amsterdam to Glasgow, sorry, and then from Glasgow they were flying to JFK. Depending on the weather, they could either divert to Iceland, and we will come to see that in a second. They would either divert to Iceland, or if on the return leg, they could either divert to Iceland or divert to Shannon, and then fly from Shannon to Amsterdam on the way back. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of research I did first before we get stuck fully into the aircraft. So I'm not doing my first look video in the way that I would do for all the ones I've done in the past. So here is a little bit of research I've done on KLM in those early years. We have a route map for KLM, and this is sourced from the 4th of November 1946, and you can go online. There's a fair amount that's popping up already on the A2A Lockheed Constellation forums, the forum threads for this specific add-on. A lot of people have already done research and are putting links up there, so go and have a look around and see what you can find. Excuse me. So from Amsterdam, we can see the outbound leg to Glasgow, and then from Glasgow, you can actually see, it's kind of hard to see, but it says New York there, and the arrow from Glasgow kind of travels west, and then it has the arrow pointer just out into the Atlantic, and it says New York. So they didn't draw obviously that far out because there's not enough space on the page. But what also interested me was how many routes it had in other directions. So from Amsterdam, in those days, they were flying to Copenhagen, to Stockholm, to Oslo, to Kristiansand, down into Spain via Geneva. They were going Madrid, Lisbon, which looks to be called something slightly different back in those days. Lisbon, or maybe something like that. Also, another route which was really, really interesting is Amsterdam via Rome down all the way to Batavia. And look at the distance they fly there. So from Amsterdam to Rome, to Cairo, to Basra, to, I can't pronounce that, to Calcutta, to Bangkok, to Singapore, then to Batavia. Bleh. And of course the other way we can see from Amsterdam via Glasgow in the north of, in the lowlands of Scotland, all the way across to Gander and then to New York. And then from New York to Curacao, and you can see there's a Buenos Aires leg, which is dotted. I'm not quite sure why, I can't read Dutch. But that was via Lisbon, or Lisbon, down to Dakar, to Natal, to Rio, to St. Paulo and Buenos Aires. So there's some really serious legs that KLM were doing, even as far back into the 40s. And you can see the Caribbean legs. As soon as they got to Curacao, they probably would have been using smaller aircraft, of course. The Lockheed Constellation, of course, was used around this time in 1946, just post-war. The Lockheed Constellation was meant to come out pre-World War II, but then, of course, World War II happened, and the Army got hold of it, and then and then the civilian aviation didn't see the Lockheed Constellation until after World War II. So this is kind of the right time period for the Lockheed legs. Another thing I found online, which was really interesting, which gives us some interesting information, is this kind of timetable. Now, this, when I first saw it, made utterly no sense to me whatsoever. I have no clue how people were supposed to understand this in those days. All of this information over on the left makes sense. That makes for interesting reading. It talks about stopovers. In principle, stopovers are granted only if arranged. Guaranteed transport of baggage. If your baggage is mislaid or sent to the wrong airport, we guarantee to forward it again to you with no extra charge. It's basically exactly the same thing they say to us today. Baggage for children, photographic apparatus. Most countries forbid photographs being taken from the air unless they are locked away in baggage cameras. Yeah. Tips. KLM staff are not allowed to accept tips. Transport of freight. Yeah, anyway, so a lot of interesting information, and I just accidentally pushed my rudder pedals in my excitement and glee, and unlatched the parking brake, but no matter. So on the right-hand page, which is what we want to be looking at today, this is the timetable of the Amsterdam to Batavia leg that we saw over here. So that's the timetable for that leg there. But we want the other leg, we want the New York bound leg, and so that's at the top right hand corner of this page. This page you can find on the A2A forums. So here we go. Now I first looked at this and I thought, I have no clue what is going on at all. And then I started to kind of look at it as closely as I can and just try and figure it out. And basically what's going on is we're going to try and follow this timetable in our following videos. We have the routes here. So Curacao, New York, Gander, Glasgow, Amsterdam. And we have two blocks of information on either side. Now the way you're supposed to read this, which is not apparently obvious, is there's two arrows on either side of this text. There's an arrow just here pointing downwards, and there's an arrow on the other side pointing upwards. And that means all of this information here relates to these legs if you're going from Curacao to Amsterdam. If you're going in that direction, you read this side, and if you're going from Amsterdam outbound to Curacao, which this arrow indicates, you read this information. So we are going to be reading this information for our outbound leg, and if we ever get as far as coming back, which I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to make videos all the way back, but we'll see. So the way this is supposed to be read, there's actually two flights that are operating at any given time on these legs, 990 and 995. And we've got little symbols spread throughout this spreadsheet, which actually we can see on this explanation of symbols box right here. Comparative timetables. That's interesting. Right, so from Amsterdam, let's see, A and D, A, D, A, D, A, D, A, D, A, D, A, D. You see those down the sides? That is a departure and arrival. Okay, so for instance, if we want to go from Amsterdam and we want to depart Amsterdam and arrive in Glasgow Prestwick, what the time we start at, local time, I want to fly 990, not 995. I just decided 990 is cooler. So basically, if we depart Amsterdam with 990, we depart at 1915 minutes. 1915, so that's 987. That's 7:15 p.m. It's not 7:15 p.m. real time at the moment, but we're not going to follow those exactly. But it would depart Amsterdam in the evening, and it would land later in that evening, in the night time at Glasgow. And then it would take off from Glasgow an hour and a half later. You can see from 22:15 to 23:45. So it arrives at Glasgow and then it departs from Glasgow again an hour and a half later. And then it does its leg from Glasgow. It departs Glasgow and arrives at Gander at 5:45 a.m. in the morning. So these are local times, remember, not GMT. These are the GMT times. And of course, with the time change, I think I think Gander's -5 GMT. So 8765. No, is that negative? That's -3 GMT. Okay, maybe not. I'm just used to being on the East Coast, which is -5. Oh, yes, it is -5. Okay, right. So it departs Glasgow and it arrives in the early morning local time at Gander. Then it stays a couple hours, that's 5:45 to 7:30 in the morning, and then it departs 7:30 in the morning local time from Gander and arrives at New York at 10 minutes past 11 the next day. So that's a pretty intense flight. You can see the other version of the same flight, the 995, there. And these little symbols, so the little circle with the X in it, is on the company's option only, the westbound flight leaving Amsterdam on Friday may be derouted via Reykjavik or Keflavik Airport instead of via Glasgow. So depending on the weather conditions, instead of flying to Glasgow, they might push further on. They might, if the weather's particularly good, let's say if they have a fantastic tailwind and they have the option of saving fuel, over the entire route overall, they would fly via Reykjavik instead of Glasgow, which is an extra, I'd say an extra 3 to maybe 4 hours from past Glasgow, and then they would go from Reykjavik on to New York. So that's interesting. Another point is this one here. On the company's option only, the westbound flight may be derouted via Reykjavik Airport instead of via Glasgow Prestwick. Well, that's not on Friday. That's for the non-Friday flights. Anyway, you could spend an hour at least looking at this thing and trying to figure out what's going on. But anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. I thought I would show that to you and try to explain what I'm trying to do. So let's get back in the aircraft. So in the aircraft here, what do I say about the Constellation? I'm going to, of course, start immediately comparing it to the 377 Stratocruiser. I have the 377 Stratocruiser. In fact, I started this YouTube channel with videos on the 377 Stratocruiser, and I have always meant to return to the 377 on my YouTube channel. And I think the fact that I now have the Constellation gives me a fantastic opportunity to return to do some do some Stratocruiser videos, and then we can now compare and contrast between these two aircraft. They are different beasts, definitely. Although they have, there is a certain amount of familiarity between them too, and that's down to the time the time that they were designed in. Some of the instruments are quite similar, some are slightly different, but overall it does give you a different feel. The autopilot system's different. The navigation, you have a bit of a different way of navigating than the 377. One thing I'll say right now, folks, is that you can track radials in this aircraft. That's a big advantage over the 377. Well, I say big advantage. I say advantage for people who like to make their navigation a little bit easier for them. I remember trying to navigate in the 377, and it was difficult because all you had was non-directional beacons. You didn't have any sort of, so you had to calculate your crosswinds and all sorts of things all by hand, and you had to compensate for your crosswinds. You couldn't just look at your radial track and say, oh yeah, my radial track shows me that I'm off, I've got to adjust. You got to do that blind, in a sense. And well, there are similarities. Similarities such as you're navigating across the Atlantic Ocean, for goodness sakes, in 1946. There are no navigational aids at all in 1946. I think the closest thing they had to a convenient navigational aids back then were they would actually post ships in the Atlantic Ocean at certain points with navigational beacons on them, so that aircraft could navigate from ship to ship across the Atlantic Ocean. That's what I've heard in my research while researching this aircraft and navigation in those days. I have no idea quite how that would work in a flight simulator. Once I figure that out, or if one of you guys tells me how that works and how you can maybe update your flight simulator to have NDB beacons in the Atlantic Ocean, I'm sure maybe we could do that. Let me know and I'll add that to a video. But that is practically the only way you can do it. So, despite the fact that this thing can use radials, that really doesn't help you when you cross the Atlantic Ocean, because you've got a good 2,000 nautical miles worth of ocean that has nothing. You have to basically navigate blind, and a lot of that was done using dead reckoning. A bit of stellar navigation was going on back then, of course. Some of the big reasons for the black eyelids on the outsides of cockpits, which you would also see on the early versions of the 737s. Some of the earlier jets in the earlier jet age would all have these black eyelid-like looking things, and that was to aid them in astro navigation and stellar navigation, navigating by the stars. They would also use like a sextant type thing for navigating in the day, and it was like, it wasn't exactly the same kind of sextant that they use on ships. It was like adapted for aviation use as well. So that's pretty much as far as what's in my head off the top of my head. I'm sure more will pop into my head as I go along. Interesting facts. I like the ice boots. I wonder if they're ice boots or if they are actual. I think they're ice boots. I haven't really paid much attention to the ice boots until more recently, now that I've been flying in the winter, of course. Anyway, yeah, it's raining here at Amsterdam, and I think the temperature, let's check what the temperature is. Oh yeah, the weather's pretty bad. The temperature is 6 degrees. 6 degrees centigrade, with a dew point of 6. So if we had some special effects on this constellation, we'd probably see prop tip vortices, wing condensation. We would see chemtrails galore. We pilots do love some good chemtrails, don't we? So all of that would be seen, but of course that's not exactly modelled, and we haven't got an FSFX packages. We haven't got one of those packages for the Constellation, unfortunately. It would be pretty cool to do that, though. Anyway, right, without much further ado, let's get stuck into some more points about our flight today. Our flight is going to be as I said, via Amsterdam to Glasgow, and today we're going to be taking off. We're not going to be flying on VATSIM because there's no VATSIM ATC on right now. We're going to be flying offline. I have been flying on VATSIM. I'm just going to close my windows. I have been flying on VATSIM in Amsterdam, and it is utterly crazy. In fact, just before starting this video, I was actually flying an Airbus A319, Speedbird A319 into Amsterdam, and it was crazy. It actually is a lot of fun, because by the time you land, you've also got like another 10 to 15 minutes worth of taxiing to figure out, which is also fun. But anyway, we're going to be taking off runway 24, which is that runway very conveniently behind us, so we have hardly any taxi time at all. It's usually when you land at Amsterdam, you've got a huge taxi, and that would be aircraft ground chart. There you go. Check that. So usually if you land on 18 right or 18 center, at least if you land on 18 center, you've got you come off the runway. You go via Quebec and back around the other side of the terminal area. Or if you come in 18 right, you come down here, you cross 18 center, and then you taxi down here and then down here and into your parking. But we are actually just situated down on the end of Alpha 8, on the deep here, just here. We're just on the end of Alpha 8, so we're just going to push back, start our engines, load up, and then we're going to taxi to Sierra 7 Echo right there, which we're going to hold, and then taxi, line up and wait 24, and then take off, and then go from there. So the star we're going to use today is the Bergy 1 Sierra Star. So we're going to take off from 24, climb out here, up, here to Bergy, and then on, or we might turn out, take a left-hand turn before Bergy onto a radial. So we're going to go through this chart here. If I just bring up Plan G, so we're going to come out here, up to roughly up here, Bergy, and then we're going to turn and fly up to the Otteringham VOR. We're going to go up there, and then we're going to fly across to DCS, which is the Dean Cross VOR, and then from Dean Cross we're going to go inbound to Glasgow, the Glasgow VOR, and then we're going to take one of the ILSs, depending on the weather. We'll figure that out there. So yeah, so this is again going back to flying a star. Oh no, sorry, a SID. We're going to be flying a SID with a radio navigation aircraft that does not have an FMC, so that's going to be fun. So basically, guys, we're going to be flying your standard SID, which is very boring, almost very boring in a 737 when you've got an FMC and it's all GPS and it's done for you, and you just follow the magenta line. We're going to be doing all of that with just this, which if I was on VATSIM, my head would probably explode. But we're going to do it offline. So let's just have a closer look at our chart. So from 24 we're going to fly to Echo Hotel 001. So distance 4, so 4 DME from SPL, which is right here. So SPL, we'll be tracking SPL. That's our first navigational fix. We're going to be, as we climb out to SPL, sorry, Echo Hotel 001, we're going to be distance 4 from SPL. At that point we take a left-hand turn to 224. We're going to fly 224 until we reach Echo Hotel 051, and the way we know that is we're going to intercept the radial from PAM, which is frequency 117.8, and when we hit that, we are going to turn onto that radial at a heading, a right-hand turn of 251. We're going to head outbound 251 until we hit the DME of Charlie Hotel. That's 388.5. The second we get close to hitting that non-directional beacon, that NDB, sorry, not DME, once we hit the NDB, we take a right-hand turn onto 329. We're going to fly 9 nautical miles on 329 until we hit another radial, which is the 355 radial from Rotterdam, which is frequency 110.4. We're going to hit the 355, we're going to turn onto that radial, and then for 19 nautical miles we're going to be climbing steadily on the 355 up until Whisper and then Bergy. But at that point we might actually leave the SID a bit early, take a left-hand turn onto our Ottringham VOR. So I'm going to be tracking this mostly via Plan G, because I have an instantaneous updated map, and it shows me exactly where I am. So I'm going to start my flight plan from EHAM. I'm going to go there, I'm going to go 001, and then I'm going to go from 001, if we remember, I'm going to go 051, which is that one there, and then from 051, I'm going to go 009, which is right there, which I'm going to be using that NDB as an aid, and then from 009 I'm going to go up to 028, which is there. Then from 028 I'm going to go up. I'm going to go up straight to Bergy, which is up here, or I'm going to go up in that direction. So that is the SID as it looks on Plan G. Okay, but I'm going to connect to Plan G like that, and I'm going to close Plan G. I'm going to minimize it and only open it whenever I finish the star to see how well we've actually flown the star. From Bergy, we're going to fly. Where's OTR? Let's add that. From OTR, we're going to go across to DCS, add DCS, and then from DCS, we're going to go up to Glasgow. I'm just going to right-click, add VOR Glasgow, and then I'm going to right-click and add airport. So that is our flight plan as it stands. Let's just zoom out, and that's what it looks like. It's going to be a lot of fun. So this is just the flight planning stage of things. If I zoom out, from there we're then going to fly direct out to Gander, which is in Newfoundland, and we're going to use a few VORs and NDBs to just track ourselves as we cross the north coast of Northern Ireland. And of course you can see there, if the weather was very favourable, you can see it looks on a flat map, it looks like Reykjavik is way out of the way, but actually it kind of would make sense to go via Reykjavik rather than Glasgow, depending, I guess. That's just, it looks like a bit of a dog's leg. But anyway, so that's I always babble a bit too much, but that's kind of what you will come to expect. So that is the basic flight plan. It sounds basic, but it's really not. I've flown this once before. It kind of worked. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. And I will start next stage of this flight. I'm going to show you these different panels here. Ooh, is it not opening? Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. Anyway, okay, so we've got the cabin is cold. We'll talk about that. Let's just open. That is our navigation, which is going to be very helpful. We've got our radios like normal. We've got, these are our engines. We don't have any complex engine management or engine stuff like in the other A2A aircraft, but this is a captain of the ship, which gives you more of the airline experience rather than just managing each individual engine. So you can see I've already done 14.6 hours on the airframe and 14.3 on these engines. Everything seems to be okay. So shift 8 and then shift 9. So you can see in my captain's log, I've already done a few flights in this. I've already crossed the pond. 3 flights, 9 hours. You can see ground distance, air distance, 2,800 statute miles. Passenger miles are there, salary. You're a captain, your record could be better. The last flight was 2 hours and 14 minutes, and that was the one that I did from Amsterdam to Glasgow in preparation for this video, so I'm not going into this fully blind. I have done this and all of this processes before. So you can see cost per mile. Passenger comment, you think the captain would let us walk around. And that was because it was so turbulent going over to Glasgow that I kept the seatbelt sign on, you know. So would you rather be sitting down for hours, or would you rather have broken neck? So, you know, but passengers never appreciate these things. Yeah, so there we go. And of course, chase plane. You've got to have a good bit of chase plane there. So yeah, I am going to meet you back in the cockpit in just a second. Okay, so we're back. Let's jump in the cockpit. Okay, so for this flight, we're going to take a full load, a full traffic load, and we're only going to take medium fuel. So there's medium fuel. We don't need, actually, we could probably do the flight to Glasgow on light fuel, but just for this time we're going to go medium fuel. So we're going to go for heavy fuel, but to begin with I'm going to start engine number 4 because I need some heat coming into the cabin. Now I did just start this earlier on, which is why it's 18 degrees inside the cabin, but what I want to do is I want to turn the battery on. And let's just turn the avionics on as well. Let's just recenter my view. Okay, so avionics is on, batteries on, my master air condition unit and my heater is on, my ground blower is on, and my cabin temperature is up to 19 degrees. So let's just add the GPU into that. As you can see, the GPU has just popped up. So we're gonna, 90 degrees Celsius. So we've heated up the cabin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the engines one by one, and then I'm going to engage our engineer, because if I engage my engineer first, and whenever I try to start the engines while he's doing things, he will try to bring the mixture down to idle cutoff, and that cuts the engines off. So what I'm going to do is start some engines. If I go to shift 8, shift 7, yeah, so pressurization okay, heating okay, AC okay. Engine 4, sorry, has a flooded engine. So we're not going to prime it anymore. We're going to keep the primer off. We're going to turn on the inertia starter, and that's just an inertia that spins up. Let's just reset the views here. Right, so we're starting engine 4. You can hear the inertia starter gaining speed. Let's just look over and turn magneto 4 to on. We might as well turn the windshield heater and those on as well. See, the inertia is on. Engage. You can see the prop spinning. See, it's not catching. Okay. Let's see, is the engine still flooded? Yeah, engine flooded. Okay. Right, well, let's start the other engines, because I'll start as many engines as I can by hand, and then we'll just hit auto start for engine number 4. Okay, that's engine 1. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. So the way you start the inertia for number 1 is you pull the inertia switch down to number 1. You can hear the inertia building up. The mag is on. Throttles are cracked.
1 turning.
Let's prime it a little bit. Okay, so I've tried turning the engines on before. It has worked for me. So I'm going to do this and see what he can do about it. Well, the cabin is warm enough. Let's just get some people inside. Let's get a heavy load going.
Excuse me. Passengers waiting for the next flight. Please report to the gate. We are about to start boarding the aircraft.
There's my little air stairs.
Just loading up now.
Okay. There you go. So people can start loading in. Ah, that's probably what it was. I didn't set the cow flaps, probably. Yeah, that's probably exactly what it was. So he's opening all the cowl flaps. Free air temperature 7 degrees, but the cabin heat is now at 21 degrees Celsius, which is great. Okay, so now with the let's turn the mixture to auto rich. Let's see. Okay.
You have it, sir.
Okay. So now
You have it, sir.
we should be able to start. Let's say engine 3. Let's start engine 3. Start the inertia on that. Let's just get all the mags on. Let's prime 3 a little bit. And engage. Oh no, I was inertia. Nope. It's the inertia for number 3. I needed to start on 4. Okay.
3 turning.
You know what? I'm just having no... Oh. Yes!
Power pressure okay.
Yes! Finally. An engine is coming online. Okay, I'm revving it a bit too much. Let's just bring it down to about 1,000 revs. I'm happy to have it about 1100. Fantastic. I was about to try again. I was about to just start recording the video again. Okay, so we know it works at least. Oh, oh! No! Okay, you know what I'm going to do at this point?
Yes, sir.
Let's auto start it all.
Oil pressure is rising. Oil pressure is okay. Oil pressure is rising.
The finer points of A2A engine maintenance and engine starting. It's tricky. It's tricky. You can do it off camera, and it's fine, and it works as intended. And then the second the Constellation knows it's on camera, it doesn't want to work for you. Okay, right. So our engines are started. Let's just have a look. Our air stairs is still there, but almost everyone is loaded. So whilst the last people are getting on board, let's start setting up. Okay. So the first navigational beacon we need is SPL. So if we're taking Bergie 1 Sierra, go to this one here.
Ground crew to captain. Cargo is loaded and we are shutting the door now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the text, the information for Bergie 1 Sierra runway 24. At distance 4 DME from SPL, left turn to 224 degrees. So we need SPL. That is our first,
Good afternoon, everybody. My name
which is
Betty, and I'm your
1084.
head stewardess for the flight today. I'm just
And this
going
is
over
our
the
navs and this is our
emergency
comms.
procedures. You'll find emergency landing instructions in the back of the seat in front of you. To fasten your seatbelt, simply slip the
That's
strap through the
1084, and you should
buckle
see,
and
yep,
pull it
one of our
through.
needles spins round.
Please keep your seatbelt fastened until
Our
the captain has
second
turned off the seatbelt sign.
is going to be
Also, smoking is only
Amsterdam,
permitted when the no smoking sign is
Charlie
Please stay in
Hotel.
your seats unless you need
Actually, no,
to
it's going
use
to be
the
Pam.
restroom.
It's going to
If
be
you
Pam,
need
which is
assistance, I or any of the flight attendants
117.8.
will be happy to help. In the event of a water landing, there are life jackets throughout the cabin. To put it on, place it over your head, clip
You
on
should
the
see that
waistband,
slightly changed there. Okay, so
exit the airplane. There are 8 emergency exits.
we're going to
located
climb
throughout
runway
the
heading
cabin.
from 24
We
and
are all
hit
here to ensure you
4
have
DME
enjoyable
from
flight
SPL.
today.
And as soon as we do
Welcome
that, we'll
aboard
turn
the Queen of the
224.
Skies.
And then we're going to hit our first radial, which is from Pam, which is 117.8, which I set on nav 2. So,
Okay, everyone's ready back here. You can scare them to death now.
alright, whatever. So, radial 251.
Good afternoon to you from the flight deck. It's nice to have you with us today. We may experience a little weather en route, but we'll do our best to give you a nice, pleasant flight. If there's anything you need, one of our friendly flight attendants will be more than happy to assist.
Okay.
Again, welcome aboard. Let's make sure
Okay.
your seatbelts are fastened and enjoy the flight.
So the way in which you track a radial in the Constellation is with this instrument here. This is usually your localizer, but it doubles as a radial tracker. It doubles as your nav1 radial tracker by manipulating this heading here. So this heading here is usually, say remember in the 172 you'd have a knob just there that you'd twizzle and it would show you, and that's how you'd select a radial. Well, what we need to do is select 251 here. Okay, so 251 is selected, which means that this localizer will start to track the 251 radial because, or actually no it won't, because we have it selected to track nav1. We want it to track nav2 by doing that. And you can see next to the selection, you can see the miles. So that's how you track a DME or a VOR, and that's how you track how far you are away from the DOR. So as soon as we get to 4 DME, I will flick over this so that we will then be tracking nav2, which will pick up the radial. So let's do that, and we'll take off runway heading, and we'll climb out, and as soon as we hit 4 DME, we'll make a turn to 224. Okay. Right. Let's push back. So what I intend to do is I intend to do this flight to Glasgow as user-friendly as possible, and then at the Glasgow to Gander flight I want to use the A2A checklists, because the checklists have been produced, the ones that are in the manual for this aircraft are really good, so I want to use the manual, the checklist there. The Glasgow flight, just checking that the rudders and everything work. That's all great. Okay, so I'm pushing back from Delta 28, and then I'm going to taxi just over to my right hand side there to the active runway. Okay, so for nav1 and nav2, and ADF1 and ADF2, these two knobs here. So if I change, just keep the turn going. If I change that, that will track the ADF or the VOR. So both, I want to be using VOR for both at the moment. So let's just make sure I don't turn off into the snow. Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to set 1 notch of flaps.
Takeoff flaps.
Okay, in terms of landing lights, let's turn those on. Passenger lights, nose light, wing light, tail light, strobe light, pitot heat, and beacon light. Let's turn them all on. And they all are. Okay. So, we've got our mixture rich, we've got our throttle, but where is our prop pitch? Well, I'll show you. The prop pitch is just here. And usually, if you have a throttle quadrant and you've bound one of the sticks.
Stewardesses, prepare for takeoff.
Yeah. If you've bound one of the throttles on your throttle quadrant to prop pitch, it will, whenever you manipulate it, if you push your stick to 100%, it goes up. If you bring it down to roughly 50%, it's middle, and 0% is down. So what that's doing is that's decreasing and increasing the propeller pitch, and when you want to stop at the propeller pitch you have, you put it back to the middle. So it is at the default position whenever you first start the aircraft, it will be at max, but as soon as we take off, we want to bring the propeller pitch back, we want to bring the RPM back for a good solid climb out, and so we will manipulate that, and I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so this is pretty basic. I'm trying to make it as simple for my own brain as well as for you folks as well. Okay, let's bring it onto the runway. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is, yeah, so you see the first needle, not the double, the single needle is nav 1 and the double needle is nav 2. So we're watching the single needle. That's going to give us a readout to DME 4, or distance 4, sorry, right there. And then the VOR radial is there, you can see. Okay? Right, so let's bring our throttles up to about 35 to 40 inches, somewhere in between there is good. You can see our RPM is maxed out. We don't have any fluid to cool the engines down, 80, like in the 377. Rotate. There's rotation. Gear coming up now.
Gear up.
And flaps coming up as well. You pull them up quite quickly. And as soon as you've got off the ground, you bring your manifold pressure down to 30 degrees and then start bringing in your RPM. Bring your RPM on all 4 engines down to about 23, about 22, 23 on the RPM. Okay, so we fly runway heading. About 30 to 35 RPM, 30 to 35 manifold pressure is good. We keep watching, we're about 3 miles on the DME, and this is where it gets tough because we're in IMC.
Pressurization set.
soon as we hit 4 DME, we're about 3.5 now, you can see, in between 3 and 4. Okay, I call that 4. Let's bring that across. And let's start banking to 224. You can see we're heading 231. Make sure you don't lose vertical speed in the bank. How's that? That's 216, that's a little bit too much. Oh, we're out of a cloud there. We should start getting the new localizer soon. Why are we not getting that new localizer? Let's double check that frequency. 117.8. 117.8. Double. Okay, we should already be turning, and I've done something wrong. What have I done wrong? Why is that not working? I've just gone and messed this up completely. 315. No, 251. I know what I did. Yeah. Okay, I've just fixed it. There we go. Okay. You can see now that the localizer is tracked in. The radial is tracked in, and we are to the left-hand side of the radial, so we need to track up again to the right. And then the aircraft has already got away from me. Okay. Whoa, it is very turbulent right now, as you can see. Okay, now we need to go into 388.5. I should have said this beforehand, but no, I didn't. So we already passed it? Yeah, we already passed it, which means we should...
Ladies and gentlemen, hello from the flight deck again. We're currently climbing to our cruise altitude. These big engines can take us to higher altitudes where the air is smooth for the most enjoyable flight.
Yep. Okay, we already missed our turn, so we let that SID get way... We just messed all of that up. 329 is my next heading. Almost 330. Right there. That's the heading. Let's see if we can stabilize this climb rate, this turbulence. Okay, so our next localizer frequency is 110.4. heading is 355. So we need to be on that radial. We need to intercept that radial on an angle of 329. We still need to be on that heading. Right, so that's the way it should work. Oh, brain overload just there. Everything just... I made one mistake, and that mistake meant that I was running after the aircraft for the rest of the time. Okay, now the turbulence seemed to have settled down momentarily. So we're heading 329. That's correct. So we're heading 329 and we're going to intercept this radial, the 355 radial from Rotterdam, which is the single needle that was pointing behind us, and that you can see the radial coming in. Once that glide slope comes center, we know that we've hit the radial, and then we can turn on to 355. Not drift. So flying a SID is a very precise thing, and when you're trying to use instruments like this, if you don't have everything set up beforehand, as I didn't have absolutely everything set up, it got hairy. So we're getting close to that localizer. Yeah, you can see we're just about on that radial now. As you can see, it's come almost center. A little bit extra, yeah, a little bit extra, and then I'll turn on to that course. Let's turn off that. Okay, I'm going to call that on the radial, as you can see. Now I'm going to turn 355. Remember, you've also got your ball indicator there, your slip and ball indicator, and that will tell you how comfortable your passengers are feeling at any given time. If you let that get out of control with wind shear or turbulence, then the passengers really start feeling it. So climbing through 7,000 now, you can see my manifold pressure is decreasing with the increase in altitude. So you always remember just to pop up your manifold pressure to about... Oh, you see that slip, and you could hear my first officer felt that slip as well. Okay, so now I'm in some sort of stable and level position, and I'm now on top of the aircraft. The aircraft is not flying me, I am flying the aircraft. What I'm going to do is think about engaging the autopilot. So the way the autopilot works I haven't talked about yet. Now once I engage the autopilot, that's going to give us some room to start planning ahead, so the aircraft doesn't take us for surprise. Still got a bit of turbulence to get out of with these clouds here. I have a feeling there's a left-hand crosswind just by the way I've been flying the aircraft, and yes, you can see Plan G is telling me I've got a 32 knot crosswind coming in from the left. Just by the way the plane has been behaving, I've sensed it. So the way the autopilot system works, we'll have more time to talk about this at length, is you've got two systems here. As long as your altitude gyro is on or uncaged, that's the first step. The second step, these three levers down here engage your autopilot. Your autopilot has, so you've got your rudder, your elevator, and your aileron servos, which are just basically the autopilot systems. So as soon as you engage all three, you'll be in a complete autopilot situation. But you can see how we've got a heading indicator here, and you've got an attitude indicator there. Basically, the autopilot will read the heading indicator and the attitude indicator, and this is where you artificially plug variables into the attitude and the heading, and it will feed those suggested values you put in, and it will try to make the aircraft, it'll try to make these two look like this, okay? So, if we look at our attitude indicator, it says 2 degrees of bank and 7 degrees up. If we put 7 degrees in the autopilot indicator, when we engage it, it will seamlessly work for us, like so. It will not jolt. And let's select 329, which is our heading. Let's actually select about 325 because of the crosswind. Again, that is going to hold the heading of 325, and this is and our altitude is being our climb is being held by the artificial altitude indicator that we've plugged in here. We've plugged 7 degrees upwards, so the gyro, the autopilot system, is holding us at a 4 degrees pitch up. But let's just add more. Let's add 10 degrees, and you can see our vertical speed will work for us there. We'll start changing. So we're still on the radial, which is fine. You can see we are 35 miles away from from Rotterdam radial and gaining, or getting further away, that is. So we're basically flying up here. Our next VOR that we want to attack. Oh wow. What is it, 355? I keep getting 355. Let's give it 350. Yeah, I keep getting my headings wrong. It's ridiculous. That's my fault. I set the heading wrong, as you can see, and I was flying off to the left-hand side. We're going to hit Bergy, and then we will pull in the next radial. Our next radial from Bergy is Ottringham, which is 113.9. Let's put that in nav 2. 113. 113.9. Okay, set 130.9. You can see that's come in. When that radial becomes 292, we'll turn on to it. So we're going to select VOR2 and we're going to set 292 in VOR2, like so, and then we'll go back to radial 1. So the problem that I did earlier on, the first thing that caught me off guard, let's just see, we're climbing through 10,000 feet. Now we're climbing through 10,000 feet. We'll take our retractable landing lights off. We're going to take our passenger lights off because it's daytime. Our nose, our wing, and we'll keep our wing light on. Okay. So, the reason that I messed up at the beginning, if we have a look at our plan G, I said I wouldn't look at plan G until I finished the star. Well, we've pretty much finished it by now. I started going outbound and I missed the radial because whenever I selected the radial, I added a frequency, but I added the bearing of the radial on the wrong, while I had the wrong VOR selected, which meant that I wasn't picking up the radial, and I didn't actually identify that problem until I was way down about here. And then by the time I was way down here, I got on top of the problem. I made a turn, as you can see right there, and then by the time I was tracking the DME, it was actually showing me that I was in front of it, and by the time I realized that, I was here, and then I turned up. So I kind of did the SID, but I did a very, very liberal SID. And now I'm about to overshoot this new radial. So let's go to VOR2, and we can see that. Let's set 292 in our heading here. Is it 292? Let's double check. Yeah, Ottringham 292. So it turns, the autopilot will turn us in a nice steady turn. Now we're on that radial, we've got a 26 knot crosswind. The wind is backed around to the southwest. So let's give us a few extra degrees so that we don't get off the radial there. And you can see we need a bit more manifold pressure. So let's push that up again to about 31 degrees. If we pull up our power settings, climb setting is to 32 degrees inches manifold pressure and 23,000 RPM. So just increase the RPM a little bit more. So we hit 2300, sorry. I'm babbling on way too much, I'm not making that much sense, but if I can fly this, anyone can fly this, and if I can understand it, pretty much anyone can at this point. But this is I love this. Radials, NDVs, DMEs, VORs. This is the way things are done. And look at this aircraft. Look how shiny it is. Let's just have a look. Look how shiny this is. Who wouldn't want to fly on a Constellation? Look at that. We're flying to a big cloud here, so we've got to be careful. Wow. Right. So
Captain, I am ready to engage the high blowers. We do need to reduce our throttles.
Okay, so it's ready to engage the high blowers. So when I reduce throttle,
Engaging high blowers.
look at that, it engages the high blowers, which increase our manifold pressure and allow us to have a higher manifold pressure with a lower throttle setting, which is great. That's good. Outside air temperatures drop to -14 degrees Celsius, but our inside temperature is a balmy 21 degrees centigrade. We don't need carburetor ice yet, not until the crew tell us up in this section here that we need it. Our navigator will tell us if the air is smooth or if we start getting a choppiness. Okay, so we can see our ground track is actually off of our VOR radial. So we're actually slipping off the radial slightly. So what we want to do is turn another few degrees to the left. And you can just see the dotted grey line is our actual path through the sky. So we've brought that. Now we will be following the radial just fine. Okay. Increase the throttle slightly. So we're up at 14,000 feet. We've been climbing steadily, really nicely. Now that we've got on top of the aircraft, we're really starting to. I'm going to take my feet off the rudders now. Now that we're on top of the aircraft, we can start to sit back and work some of the details into the aircraft here. Right, so we're following this radial, as you can see, 292. We've got 27 knot crosswind. We've just made an adjustment so that we will fly along the radial properly. Yeah. So a SID with radio navigation is not easy. I did it a while ago in the Twin Otter, and I made a video of it. But this time it got away from me. If I was to do that again, and my VOR selector called me out, and I put in that radial heading on the wrong VOR, and that's what caught me out. I didn't catch that quick enough. But anyway, you guys saw what happened, and hopefully it's a learning experience for you as well. Let's just pretend ATC is giving us 1450 053. Let's make sure that our transponder is on. Let's turn on our altitude reporting. I don't know why whenever I mouse over it, it says it's on when it shows it as being off. But anyway, and that's how we test it, and then that's how we squawk ident. So as I said earlier, I didn't really show you this, but we've got COM1 and COM2, NAV1 and NAV2. There's our autopilot in doing the job properly. There's our trim. Our trim is really, really helpful. Trim is really good in this aircraft. I will show you trim when we get into cruise. We've got a lovely window here that we can't open right now because it's we're in flight. As you can see, we've got our side here. This is our cockpit lighting, which is really good. This bit here is how we select COM1 or COM2 to talk on. So if we have a standby frequency, say if we have ground frequency on COM1 and tower frequency on COM2, and they tell us to change to tower frequency, we literally just have to flick that from there to there, and then we can then we're talking on COM2, and then we can set COM1 to another, the approach or radar controller. So that's how that works. Climbing through 15,000 feet, 30 inches, 29 inches of manifold pressure. Let's bring that back up to about 32 to continue our climb. If we look at the overhead, of course, there's our magnetos that I was showing you earlier. Windshield heater, seatbelt smoking is on. Windshield wiper I was using while we were on the ground in Amsterdam because of the rain. And you can see this is our two ADFs. So we can set, so if I wanted to set nav1, well, if I wanted to set ADF1, oh, well, actually let's do it now, Okay, so we're flying along. Do we have an NDB that's close enough to us? There's one on the East Anglian coast just here. This, the NDB is Great Yarmouth is 417. Let's go NDB range. We're not quite into it. Oh, we're almost into it. NDB range of Great Yarmouth is there. We're just coming into it now, and that's going to be 417. So if we track 417, if we go up and put 417 here, 417. Oh, we need to change to a higher band. Nope. That one. Okay. 417 set. So 417 is set in number 1, and that's number 2. So we want to track number 1. We come down here, and instead of having our VOR1 tracking a VOR, we want to make it track an NDB. We bring the RMI selector, the number 1 pointer, from VOR to there. And what that's done is that means that the needle number 1 is tracking Great Yarmouth now, which leaves VOR2, which is 113.9, which of course is Otteringham, 113.9. That leaves the double needle, which is VOR2, to track the radial. So we can track a radial, and we can track an ADF, we can track an NDB at the same time. And then if I wanted to bring in an NDB frequency onto the second needle, I would actually set it in the number 2 ADF right there. Whew. So that was a very simple crash course in how to fly and navigate in the Constellation. Rather than sit there for an hour boring you to death telling you about it, you saw it actually working you saw me in action actually trying to make it all work. Let's go back to the navigator's station. I haven't actually spent much time back in the navigator station. There's no clickable things on this section here. That's just for show. This is the same COM selector that we saw down on the pilots down there. It's the same one there. You can listen to the ADF noises. So if we do that, let's see. I wonder if we could listen to the NDB. No, actually, let's try and listen to the VOR. Does it tell us what the display range rings? No, it won't show us the VORs. No, it's actually nav 2 that we want to listen to. There we go. So we're now listening to Otteringham's Morse code identifier. We'll listen to that one more time before turning it off. Turn that off, and that's how you identify, beyond a shadow of a doubt, exactly what radial of what VOR you are following. Let's just push the throttle back up to 32, because as we continue to climb 18,000 feet, we're going to level off at 24,000 feet. That is the ceiling of the Constellation. And let's just turn off the breathing. I don't like the breathing. Like so. Whew. Well, ladies and gents, that was a crash course. Definitely. Crash course and a half. And that right there is a screenie, if I'm not very much mistaken. Right there. Right. We'll get up to cruise. Okay, let's just pop that back. Okay, let's just double check our wind speed. Air is smooth, which is fantastic. So this tells us our range. Endurance, we could go for 6 hours at our current setup, which, considering that we haven't actually kicked back into cruise yet, is quite impressive. Flight time's 29 minutes so far. Distance is only 68 nautical miles. We don't go terribly quickly in this thing, not until we get into cruise. Once we get into cruise, we'll be cruising at speeds, similar speeds that the Boeing 377 cruise at, about 190 knots at 24,000 feet, which works out at maybe around 300 nautical miles ground speed on average, which is not bad. So ground speed at the moment is 183 knots, or 210 miles an hour. Average ground speed so far is steadily climbing. And you can see we're gradually, you can see how the red needle there on our navigation instruments, our navigation chart. Red needle is the VOR, is the radial, and the grey dotted line is the path that we are currently flying with this wind component. So if we bring our heading maybe 1 or 2 degrees to the right, we'll get closer. And so navigation the Lockheed Constellation is more about monitoring and adjusting. Every now and then you monitor, you adjust, you monitor, you adjust, and that is how you fly this aircraft. Well, inside radio navigation areas, of course. Once you get outside radio navigation over the Atlantic, it's a different idea. It's a different way of doing things, and we'll get to that in the next video. But for now, we're climbing through 21,000 feet. Let's actually just change over to standard barometric pressure, which is 1013, like so. Okay, so now we can say we're flying on flight levels instead of just bare altitude. So we're flight level 213, 210 roughly. Okay. So you can see if I flick over to VOR selector 1, you can actually track the distance we are away from the NDB, the non-directional beacon at Great Yarmouth. So we can see that we are just coming inside. Oh, is it growing? It's growing, so we must be going away from Great Yarmouth. That doesn't make any sense. Let's look at our thing. That doesn't make sense. Why are we going away from Great Yarmouth? Because we're going towards Ottringham. We're going towards Ottringham. You can see that's reflected. 120. We're just 120 miles now to Ottringham. But if we go over to Great Yarmouth, which is the DME, looks like we're getting further away. But maybe it's because it doesn't track the distance of NDBs. An NDB isn't a range. It isn't a distance measuring a piece of equipment. It's only it's a non-directional beacon, which means that it only gives you the direction to the beacon. It doesn't give you the range to the beacon. The only way you get the range is with a DME, which a VOR has and an NDB doesn't. So I would not rely on trying to track the distance to an NDB with this system. I could be wrong, but then again, being wrong is something I'm good at, and learning from being wrong is generally what happens, which means I learn somehow. Okay, so that's fantastic. That's the way I've been flying the Constellation so far. Looking back again at Amsterdam, I've definitely got room for improvement in following SIDS and stars. There should be a start into Glasgow. I'm not sure if it's from DCS. We would need to go to our charts. Let's pull up. I think it's. Oh no, not routes. We need to go to this EGPF is Glasgow. So let's go stars. Let's go the RNAV stars. Well, actually no. Let's go DMEs. Okay. Let's have a look. Right. So there is the Clyde. There's Glasgow. There's the Liber 1 Delta star. And we're going to be coming up from the south. So I don't really see. Yeah, we've got different stars coming in from there. GOW VOR or DME inoperative. Inoperative. So Tulla. We might have Tulla. Yeah, okay, so from TLA actually. From TLA, yeah. radial 304 from TLA goes along there to Lanark, and from Lanark you then go, I think you would vector, yeah. Warning, ATC cleared, clearance, do not proceed beyond GLW. Do not proceed beyond GLW, okay. This, I'm not fully up on these stars into Glasgow, but oh, coming up to cruise. Okay, and that's a good sign because our throttles are all the way to 100%, and our so let's not do that. Let's do this. Let's bring the autopilot elevator control. Let's first climb up. Let's climb the last 90 feet up to 240, and then see if we can flatten out and maintain a level flight. Okay, so let's call that It's okay if we climb a little bit too high, because we can always bleed off some altitude and turn that into speed, which will help us. So 3. It's a bit weird, you can see it spams itself from 2 to 3 to 4. Every time I turn the I think I messed up the let's go back to I messed up slightly. I've got to turn a few degrees like that. Okay, I've put -1, so that's going to hold us. And as the aircraft speeds up, we're going to have to readjust. Okay, so cruise 29 inches manifold pressure and 2200 RPM. So the manifold pressure is 30. Let's just bring it back to 29. Let's bring the manifold pressures down to 2200 RPM. So that's our cruise settings. As you can see, as we speed up, we start gaining altitude, because with more speed, the wings create more lift. More lift creates upwards flight, which means that we keep having to point the nose down every now and then to keep level. And this means that our speed will gradually climb out of 160 up to about 180 to 190 knots. That's the idea. We're currently -37 degrees centigrade. Okay, so if I was to leave the autopilot at -7 degrees on the altitude indicator, and now I'll start using trim.
Pressurization is set.
Yeah, thank you. Pressurization is set. As we start increasing the speed, we'll see our rate of descent starting to climb again, because we're flying faster and faster. Once we reach our fastest possible cruise speed and we stop increasing our speed. By the way, I need to bring my... Oh, yeah, no, the engineer's already brought the mixture to auto lean. Let's just use a little bit of trim. We'll just continue trimming as our speed increases. And as soon as you get the aircraft flying at a nice, good, fast cruise speed, with the right settings, at the right altitude, you can trim it out and it will stay exactly where it is for hours on end. The only thing you have to worry about in this aircraft with this autopilot is the autopilot runs on a gyroscope delete previous version of Windows. Your computer's running low on storage space. Nope. I'll worry about that later. So the autopilot's running on a gyro, and the gyro is running off of your indicated heading. But what happens is, as you fly across the face of the Earth, your indicated heading it's not synced up properly with your magnetic heading. So your heading indicator is 280, but the compass says 281, and that's because as we fly along, we desync our indicated heading with our true magnetic heading, which means that every now and then you have to press the D button to resync them up. So if we go down here and look, yeah, if I just hit the D button, you see the aircraft turn to the right ever so slightly. That's because it's readjusting itself. So you have to remember, particularly when you're doing a transatlantic haul, I believe the manual for this aircraft states that you should re-sync up your gyros and your heading every hour and a half to 2 hours, but I usually do it like once every 10-15 minutes. Yeah. Okay, let's just have a look. The NDB, the Great Yarmouth NDB, is almost a beam of us now. If we flick back to it, it says we're 112 miles away from it. I have a feeling that's not tracking the NDB, that's tracking whatever it is that's in VOR1, which is 110.4, which is... what's 110.4? What is 110.4? Was that SPL? No. What's 110.4? I don't know. Whatever 110.4 is, I'm 115 miles away from it. But I can prove that that's what it's tracking if I change nav1. Just watch the miles there. Watch. Yeah. Okay, so I just changed that there. So in nav1, well actually no, let's just keep it in nav2 because that's tracking inbound to Ottringham. And as you can see, we're still climbing again. Let's just trim down a bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello from the flight deck again. We're now settled back into a nice cruise. This is where the aircraft can spread its wings and fly high and fast. Looks like we have smooth air, so enjoy flying in the most luxurious commercial airliner in the world today.
Must remember to turn the fasten seatbelt sign off because AccuSim is...
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, which means you can leave your seat now if you wish.
Yeah, because remember last time you could see from... You think the captain would let us walk around a bit. Yeah, it's because last time I forgot to turn that off. Well, my excuse was turbulence, and there was a lot of turbulence when I did this leg recently. Okay, so air speed's up to almost 190 knots, which is good. And you can see our aircraft has started to level itself out. And you can see that we're just to the right-hand side of the radial, which you can see is starting to be evident on plan G, so we're going to have to readjust for that. So let's go to shift 5, and yep, we can see that you see the grey dotted line is actually showing that we're drifting off, so we need to bring back, I'd say 2 degrees. So 248, 284, 283, 282. So let's bring that back to 282. Let's look at that again. You can see. Readjust, I'm hoping. Or it should have. Oh well. It's not too big a discrepancy as of yet. So we're still inbound 75 miles. Let's think about setting up the Dean Cross VOR 115.2. That is 115.2. And if we flip, we don't want to to track Great Yarmouth anymore. Let's just flip that back. You can see we're too far away from Dean Cross to actually track it, but that's ready and waiting for whenever we do fly in range far enough. So let's just go back to Dean Cross. Let's right click on that on Plan G and set VOR range. Oh, and you can see actually we've just come into range of the VOR, so we should be able to now be tracking it. .2. Yeah, 15.2, Dean Cross. We should be able to, that should be tracking it. Anyway, let's just see if we're, nope, we're not picking anything up from VOR1. Did I do that right?
Gentlemen, hot coffee, tea?
Oh, thank you. Don't mind if I do.
Very hot. Quick, take a sip.
I'm going to take a sip of my tea. It's probably,
There you go.
It's kind of cold by now, but...
There you go. Got it?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's put that down. Right. The question of why. Let's just bring back my. Turn left slightly because I can see we're drifting even further off course there. Why are we not tracking that 115.2 Dean Cross? Why are we not picking up that VOR? We should be in range. Oh, yeah, now I've come back. You can see we're now tracking that. Okay, so we're tracking the 292 radial inbound to Otteringham, which is correct. The radial for Dean's Cross will be 303. So if we go over to VOR1, and then you can see how that heading changes whenever we change to VOR1, which means it's saved 292 for VOR2. Let's go to VOR1 and hit in 303. Yeah. So that's 303. So that's Dean Cross. And you can see we're about half scale on the localizer or on the radial for Dean Cross, which means that we're getting close. And let's go back to shift 5. Yeah, so we're going to catch up to the radial again, because you can see our true course is coming into the radial again, which is good. Okay, so that is essentially how you fly in the virtual skies in areas of the world where you have radio navigation happening. Our altitude is not quite right. The way I would sort out my altitude is I would use trim. Just go down trim for a bit. Like so. And as we descend, we pick up speed, and the speed makes us climb again. So actually that will 200 knots over the 200 knots airspeed up here would give us, let's see, ground speed is 263 knots. Let's just see what this tells us. Ground speed 266 at the moment, which is 300 miles an hour over the ground. Flight time 48 minutes. To sea level. Well, I'm not quite sure what to sea level means, but... And that shows us our range.
Pressurization is set.
So almost 2,000 nautical miles more at this current fuel load. And we only chose a minimum medium fuel load, remember. If we'd chosen heavy fuel load, we'd have a lot more. more range. But anyway, so Great Yarmouth is off the East Anglian coast over there, and we're heading up to Otteringham. And we're still roughly 51 nautical miles outbound of Otteringham with an airspeed now of 212. That's pretty good actually, but that's because we're descending. You can see we're descending close to 24,000. And as we come close to 24,000, I'm going to trim up, and that will actually trim for level flight, like so. And that's essentially how you have to work the airplane. You really have to fine tweak. You have to fine tune the airplane as, oh, there's a little shift in the air currents there. Did you see that? 48 knots crosswind now. Okay. Yeah, you really have to. Okay, as I flick over to Dean Cross VOR, oh, the Dean Cross radial is coming in, which is good. Very gradually, as we get down to about 5 nautical miles, we'll think about, or maybe within 5 nautical miles, we'll think about changing over. So I'll stay with you until we get to Otteringham, and I'll keep you online on the video here while I actually the reason why we're a bit fast is our manifold pressure was slightly high. I brought it back down to 29 inches manifold pressure, so we should see. It's always good to treat your engines with care. These engines on the Lockheed Constellation, by the way, guys, are designed to be bigger than actually needed. The idea is that if you have engines that are bigger and more powerful than you actually need, it means you've automatically built in redundancy. What just happened? There's a bit of a shift in the air current again. By building in redundancy into the system, you create engines bigger than you actually need, and that means that you will never actually need to stress them too much. Even at max fuel load, a max passenger load on takeoff, you still have more than enough power. So that means actually that compared to other aircraft, I think you can fly perfectly fine with quite low manifold pressures. In the Boeing 377, your manifold pressure would be another 5 inches maybe in cruise. I seem to remember your normal cruise manifold pressure is 35, 36 maybe. Here it's 29 in the Constellation at cruise level at 24,000 feet. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, these are big beasts of engines, and they can run at low manifold pressure and low RPM, and they still have enough power to pull this thing through the air at this altitude. That's pretty cool. And that, of course, means that if you constantly are running an engine at a lower manifold pressure and lower RPM, you get more life out of the engines because they're not stressing themselves out at the moment. They're not really stressing themselves out in the climb out either, even when you're climbing. I mean, you saw whenever I pulled out of Amsterdam, I can just see I'm to the left of my radial, so that's just 282. Let's go 282. 292 actually. That's about it. Okay, so even when I was pulling out of Amsterdam, you could see I brought the manifold pressures up to about 40 inches, and in doing so, it was fine. It was about 40 inches manifold pressure and firewalling the RPMs, but I wasn't doing that for long. That's the thing. I've never actually had any engines on the Constellation catch fire or be overstressed before, and that's down to the fact that I've learned how to fly AccuSim aircraft, and by now I know how not to die by not setting engines on fire, by not overstressing them. And you just simply do not learn that with any other add-on really for flight simming, other than the A2A add-ons. Let's just trim up slightly again because I was just added a little bit of
set.
Okay. So you just have to keep on top of the aircraft. You have to keep on top of the altitude. You have to every now and watch the speed. So you're constantly, you find when you're flying this aircraft and you're flying without a time multiplier, which you really should never do in any A2A aircraft, because it would mess it up, or it would screw with the way AccuSim works, probably. You just find that you're constantly monitoring the systems. Whoop. There's a little air current there. Let's just go back and check. 45 degrees crosswind still. So we're getting closer to Ottringham. As soon as we get to Ottringham and
Pressurization is set.
Yeah, thank you. As soon as we get to Ottringham, I will flip over to track Dean Cross, and after we have settled onto the Dean Cross radial, I will leave you and we'll come back at the top of descent, so that this video doesn't turn out to be too long. But yeah, so this is pretty much living the life as a KLM pilot in 1946, really. Taking 3 hours to fly from Amsterdam to Glasgow. Can you imagine it? 3 hours to go from Amsterdam to Glasgow. Of course, we say that today, but of course, back in those days, 3 hours from Amsterdam to Glasgow would have been fast. It would have been cutting-edge technology. Let's just enjoy. Look at the rivets and the light on this aircraft. They've really done a fabulous job with the modelling. All the rivets. Look at the bump mapping, everything. The bump mapper for A2A, whoever that is, he's just done a fantastic job on a number of products. And that's Chase Plane there, putting in a bit of camera shake every time I come up to the wash of the engines. Actually, what I'm going to do, that is a fantastic screenshot right there. I'm actually going to just add these screenshots that I took. I'll put these on my Facebook page. Let's just wait. Like so. So thank you very much for joining me, folks. That is... Right, there we go. Ooh, another little tweak there. We are 16 nautical miles away from our first turn, or our... Not our first turn, but yeah, you get the idea. Okay, so I believe that is... What river is that now? That's the Barton upon Humber. That is Scunthorpe. I thought York was further up. No? I think that's York. York is in here somewhere, isn't it? Doncaster. Nottingley. It's Leeds. That's... Where are we? That's the Wash. So this right here, I have a feeling this... What river is this? Let's just zoom in and see if it tells us. Nope, I don't think it's telling us what that is. Ah well, that's not important right now. Right now, what is important is we're coming close to our VOR. Our aircraft is doing fantastically well. And so you can see, I mean, this would be perfect for VAT simming. I haven't taken this out on VATSIM yet, but the first time I do, I'll make a video of it. Maybe I'll do a VATSIM leg leaving Glasgow with some Glasgow ATC. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so 8 nautical miles away now. Let me just turn the track IR off, as that gets a bit tedious. I want to drink some of my tea. Okay. Yeah. So, here we are. Very merry. We've got our wing anti-ice and our prop anti-ice over there. It's both off, we don't need it. We've got our carburetor anti-ices there as well, in case we come down into Glasgow and we run into issues. Okay, so let's just zoom in here. 5 nautical miles away from our VOR, and getting a little bit of turbulence there. The wind is backed round to become more of a headwind. We're going to pass over Otteringham now. Okay, 4 nautical miles, let's turn over to VOR1, and you can see we're pretty much right on top of the radial for a VOR1. And in doing that, let's go over to, you can see when we turn. Okay, so we now want to track onto radial number 1. And that's just disappeared. I think it's because we're right over the top of it. Yeah. See, now it comes active again, now that we've passed over it and we're starting to pick that signal up again. Okay, so now we need to turn to the right. Let's just... That was 303, I remember, but let's fly 300. Just to see how that works out for us. Remember, okay, wow, our wind has turned around quite sharply now. We've got pretty much a full-on headwind now. Look at that. So we pretty much do have to fly 302. I'm going to put 302 in right there. Okay, so now that we've turned onto the radial,
Pressurization is set.
You can see if we turn over to VOR2, we're going outbound from Otteringham now, very gradually. And now we're 126 miles out of Dean's Cross, or Dean Cross. And so right here, folks, I will leave you. It's a lovely afternoon. You can see the sun is starting to go down, so it looks like we'll be getting into Glasgow with some lovely evening light. Look at that. That is beautiful. Yep, so we'll get into Glasgow with some nice evening light, and I will catch you at top of descent. So talk to you later, guys. Okay, folks, so I'm now on my downwind leg, as you can see. Hi folks, so now I'm on my downwind leg, as you can see. You can see it is incredibly turbulent. The airport is over off to behind me on my left, and I'm doing my best not to descend below 3,000 at this point. I'm going to put my propeller pitch up to maximum, bring my propellers back up to something like that, try to trim a bit, and have a look where I am. So you can see at this point I did some circles in a clear spot to try and descend without hitting turbulence, but I've had a few bumps on the way down. At this point I'm going to go over to VOR1, which I've already pre-selected my my ILS, my localizer and ILS, which is now at VOR1, and the runway heading, the localizer track is 231. So what I'm going to do is at roughly 3,000 feet, which that is where we are at. And make sure I'm on my rudder pedals. We've got a huge hill over there, and you can see my glide slope coming up to meet me. The glide slope is the horizontal one, the localizer is the vertical one. So as the glide slope comes up, we know that we are getting further and further away from the runway. Coming into the lowlands of Scotland in the winter is simply asking for it, really. Look at those big hills. If I just pop on, yeah, you see, I'm going to come around and turn and come in. 35 knot of wind. That's ridiculous. And at 3,000 feet, you don't want to be any closer to those mountains right there, particularly in the dark. And I think this is the site where there was a KLM Constellation crash, actually, in this time period in the 1940s. And it was something to do with a turn over mountainous terrain. And they didn't judge it right, and they were coming down on a certain kind of... Whoa, that's wind shear. I hate wind shear. My passengers hate wind shear as well. Okay, there's that light there on the dash is my radio altimeter, showing me that I'm now 2,000 feet over the ground, radio altitude. And I'm turning, or I'm trying to turn. Look at that wind shear, it's awful. I'm trying to turn onto my localizer and my glide slope. Now I've turned around, I'm going to fly straight here until I attack the localizer. Like so. Let's just check the temperature on my engines is still fine. Okay. Let's just make sure my RPM is set to max, which it should be. Yep, that's set to max now. Okay, I can see the airfield right there in the distance, but I'm going to pay attention to my instruments rather than my visibility at this point, because I know the visibility is going to pop in and out, and this is where I need to get funky with my controls to stay on this localizer. Now the Constellation is a big beast, to be sure. Now there's the localizer right there. The Constellation is a big beast, and I'm flying at about 130 knots roughly right now. And it doesn't take long before this thing slows down, so I'm actually going to keep the speed up, particularly with this turbulence. I overshot that slightly. I'm going to keep my speed up, as I say, particularly with this turbulence, until as late as I can possibly make it. Okay, there we go. So it's only in sim time, it's only 3 p.m. But you can see, because we're so high on the Earth, we're pretty high on the Earth's globe, not the Earth's globe, we're pretty high on the globe right now, so, and in January, this is the same day as I'm recording this, which is the 9th of January,
Pressurization set.
2007. There's the runway lights way off in the distance there. And you can see we've been blown off the localizer. I was on the localizer and I was blown off it. But now we're on the glide slope as well. We just need to... Whoa. Oh, this is going to be crazy. See, yeah, we blown off slightly there. I need to come back on it. I'm doing well on the glide slope if I'm still in between 500 to 700 feet per minute. Okay, I'm going to start slowing down now. I'm going to bring my manifold pressure down to about 13 inches. That's going to start to slow me down. Yeah. see I'm visual with the runway now, but only just. I'm going to bring my throttles all the way back now. First notch of flaps right there.
1 notch down.
And all of a sudden, I'm going to have to start trimming and working this. There's the blue bulb, that's the outer marker.
Gear down.
Gear down. Now I'm getting lower. The air is getting a little bit more stable. Right, I'm going to bring back in my throttle.
Stewardesses, prepare the cabin for landing.
Approach flaps.
Approach flaps.
Okay, stabilize at 500 feet per minute descent rate, which is good. And as I expected, the visibility is going to come in and out, but I can still just barely see those runway lights. And I've got quite a crosswind from the right hand side if I just check that on. Yeah, it was a 21 knot wind coming from my right hand side slightly. I'm just going to play this as best I can. Oh, but just look at this. This is just beautiful. In the snow and everything. Look at that. A little bit lower on the glide slope. This is where you start to get you start to squirm in your seat, because this is AccuSim. And the passengers know what's going on. They will remember this. And this goes on your record, what you do. See, I need to be a little bit further to the left hand side. There you go. That's the leading lights coming into view. Oh my goodness. Let's see how well I can grease this. Whoa.
500 feet.
500 feet. This is where you can turn this to hundreds and tens. .400 feet coming up. 400. Landing flaps.
Flaps down.
Middle marker.
300 feet.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. I have a bad feeling about this
200 feet.
mission. I have a bad feeling about this mission.
100 feet.
White marker, 100 feet.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
10, come on. Oh, that actually wasn't too bad. That was really good, actually. That was much better than I thought it would be. Okay, bring the throttles down to about 1100 RPM. Start using the brakes. Whoa. Wow. There's a bit of a scenery glitch there going on. I do not know why. It's flicking between default scenery. It's flicking between winter textures and autumn textures. Or is it flicking between default scenery and... Yeah, that is really weird. Oh!
Hello again, from the flight deck. We're now taxiing back to the terminal. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelt seatbelts fastened until the aircraft has come to a complete stop. On behalf of the entire crew, thank you for being with us, and we hope you had a pleasant flight.
Look at that wind. Let's bring the flaps up.
Flaps up.
And while I was landing and taxiing, my engineer was bringing the cow flaps out. Yeah, I don't know what's... Oh, it depends what angle I'm looking at the scenery. That is so weird. I'm going to have to try and tweak that. I don't like that. Something wrong with my UK 2000 scenery. Yeah, there's always something wrong with Flight Sim. There's always something wrong with your Flight Simulator install. However much you tweak it, there's always a bug, or there's always some discrepancy happening that you have to spend time trying to fix. That's why YouTubing flight simming is sometimes such a pain. Sometimes where you don't throw out that many videos because you're always tweaking things. Right. That's my brake. Wow. Okay. Well, let's just turn 3 of the engines off, like so. Let's keep the 4th engine on just for the moment while we unload. Door. There's a door light. Yeah.
Ground crew to captain. Doors are opened. We are just going to start unloading.
Okay. Yeah, that's weird. I'm going to have to try and fix that somehow. Well folks, thank you very much for watching this first A2A Connie video of mine on my channel. It's been a pretty crazy time. That's just while they're unloading. And we can hear them unloading. Let's just review the flight. So, flying in winter isn't the easiest thing, definitely, particularly with A2A aircraft, because you just feel the turbulence so much more with AccuSim when your crew, particularly with the captain of the ship add-on aircraft, the 377 and the Connie, where crew and passengers really feel turbulence and so forth. So we just pulled out of Amsterdam out of 2-4, tried to follow the SID, overshot it quite horrendously. But then we straightened things out and we went on to, you know, there are things I could definitely improve here, you can see with my accuracy. But as you can see, as we got on to, we settled into the cruise, we could see we really did, with the wind blew us left and right a couple bits, and you can see on my way up to DCS it blew me again slightly, and then as we came down there was a huge weather system pretty much right over Glasgow. And I saw about 10 miles south of Glasgow, I decided to turn around and do a circling descent, almost like a holding pattern, and then tried to break through the clouds. And as I was on the downwind leg, that's where I picked up the recording and then did the base, and that's what you just saw. So all in all, that's been a good first flight for this series of legs. You can see those are that's the flight and all. And next video that I'm going to do in the Connie, I'm going to go, rather than go from Amsterdam to Glasgow, I'm going to go from Glasgow all the way over to Gander, which is just here in Newfoundland. And yes, we do have enough fuel for that. You'd hardly think it with an old aircraft from 1946, but we do. And then once we get to Gander, we're going to do the 3rd leg from Gander down to New York, right there. And then there's a leg from New York to Curacao, I think it was. That's just yeah, Curacao. Is that Hato? Hato? Haiti. Hato. Corico Hato. Down to the Caribbean. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will wait. I will continue recording just so that we can see.
Count flaps.
Shutting down systems.
There we go. So, let's see what she says. See what Heidi says, or not Heidi, but
Autopilot off.
okay. So my captain's log's just updated.
Ground crew to captain. Door is shut.
Okay.
That
So,
was an exhausting flight. Bye now.
alright, she says that was an exhausting flight. Bye now. Okay, so we could have done worse. I thought I'd really made a big issue with the turbulence there. The turbulence was difficult. But you can see, it says, you are a captain, the airline is satisfied. I didn't even realize we were flying. Ace that landing. I want to be a better pilot. So I apparently did a good job of the landing. And the passengers didn't think that was terribly bad, so I'm going to chalk that up to be a victory, really. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video, which should be a PPL training video, by the way, guys, so stay tuned. Okay, I will chat to you later. Bye.